one of my number one priorities that I spend the first 60 to 90 minutes on, it's in the category of leadership.
The leader gets the result that they want by serving the people that are in their business, getting the things that they need for their life that they want to live.
My number one tip is what's important and what's not important.
You're able to execute on what it is you actually want, and then you actually start building self-identity, self-belief that you can handle these hard things, and these things that were hard before are just normal routine.
If you can hone in on that 1 to 2 priorities, that's going to drive the needle in these other things that you're doing on a daily basis, then everything else lifts up.
Maybe you just do something slightly different, just slightly. Like, you're not revolutionizing your life right now. It never lasts, never works. Just slow incremental progress, 0.1% every day, 36% at the end of the year. And in 10 years with compounding interest, you're just a different human being. Even if you're not the leader yourself, you still are a leader. You need to lead yourself. You can lead your leadership.
Where are you multitasking? Where are you just showing up and doing non-important tasks? I'm going to be the person that shows up with vitality. I'm going to be the person that does the uncomfortable things. It's time to perform.
So you get that text from someone, you look down, you're like, oh, I don't want to answer that right now. Or I don't know how to answer that right now. I don't want to deliver bad news. I don't want to disappoint this person. I'll answer it later. I'll answer it in like 5 minutes. An hour goes by, you see it again, you're like, oh, still not ready to answer that. And before you know it, 3 days have gone by and you've not responded back to that text. You've not followed through. And guess what it's done to you? It's pulled your peace, because you know it's on the back of your mind. You know you haven't responded to them, and you know you still need to. And now you've gone and made it super awkward, because now you've waited 3 days, and the same outcome is going to be the one that you would have done if you'd just sent that text right away at the start. Why do we do that? Why are we ghosting people? There's a reason behind it. There's a psychological barrier. And today we're going to talk about how to overcome that, why it's happening, and then it's going to free your life up. It's going to give you your identity back, because what does that identity tell you about yourself when you don't respond to someone? I'm not someone that can respond. And you have all this guilt and anxiety and wasted time and energy, and it really impacts your creative space. Whether you know it or not, it's stopping you from living your life fully and expressing yourself fully. And so that's why it's so important. It's such a little thing, and it's just a tip of an iceberg. There's a lot more behind that, and it's showing up in other places, as we always talk about. So today we're gonna hone in on that, and you're gonna take some nuggets away that will empower you to text right back, no fear, be in control, in charge, and love your life by doing something so simple, by just responding quickly to people and not being afraid. So yeah, and the perfect person to talk about this is, we were talking about this earlier, Sean has never had this issue. He will respond back to you immediately. He'll respond back to you before you've even sent a text. That's how fast he'll respond, which is ridiculous, but that's what it feels like sometimes. He is on it. This is something I've struggled with many times in the past, and I've learned this is no way to live. And so I've leveled up in this area, and it's almost embarrassing to say, because it's something so ridiculous, so small. Why is it an issue? But it bothered me, and I know a lot of people suffer from this. So many memes out there, right? But yeah, so we're going to jump into today. Sean's perfect person to talk to. I'll give some of my anecdotes, my experiences, how I've overcome it, what I've been able to do, and what it's done for me. So yeah, man, take us away, Sean.
Beautiful, man. And make sure you stay around to the end, because I've actually got an actionable strategy too that I've implemented here recently that has just been a game changer. So
I'm looking forward to that.
Make sure you stay around to the end for that. So I'll share that. Yeah, man. From my perspective, it's an epidemic almost, right? As far as as far as ghosting people in business and even personal life as well. And so, man, I'm an imperfect human being as well. And I think there's a rule, what I always try to follow is a 24 to 48 hour rule. And so one of the things that I've had to really reflect on recently on ghosting that I struggled in was, to a certain degree, was family, Ewan. And for instance, whether it be my dad or whether it be not necessarily my mom, but my dad. And when I pull back the layers on why I would prolong that 24 to 48 hours, first off, what would you consider ghosting? Would you consider like ghosting somebody like never responding or never following up, or a week later, 2 weeks later, or just never responding or communicating?
And maybe a bit of both. It's kind of both. Like if you haven't responded back in 3 days, 2 days, and it's probably a pretty straightforward response, that would be considered kind of like, well, now it's awkward, and never texting back. That's something I haven't really. I will almost always respond back. I mean, there's very few people I haven't ever responded back to, but yeah, that would be. I think they're both forms of ghosting, and I think there's different levels there, because there are people out there who they won't respond back at all. And they are suffering from that, but it's more of the same, to be honest. There's a reason why we're either not responding back or we're waiting long, like we're taking time,
So throwing some humor into this, my chemistry between me and my dad, right? And we love each other. We go to war with each other. And so my dad's been retired. He's been retired for a few years. And so when I was building the businesses, that takes a lot of your time, energy, and effort. And so one of the things that I had neglected, unfortunately, was, and that I've been working on the last couple of years, is that relationship with my dad. And so early and often, he would text message me because he's retired, I'm working, and I think he forgot that I was actually working in peak and building phase. And so he would text me like simple things, hey, good morning, make it a good Friday with a stronghold, or text me his breakfast, and then be like, oh, that's cool. Like in my mind, I'm like, man, that's great, Dad. I'm like, and then I'd go back to work, just making sure that there wasn't an emergency or something to get him. There wasn't something going on, I want to make sure my dad's safe, and because he lives by himself. But so over time, when we're doing this episode today, I'm like, is that ghosting? Because like I would follow up with him 3 or 4 days later, and I think there's a certain, and the reason I'm bringing all this up is because I think there's a fine line between like the scenario, the situation, in what.
How did you feel when you didn't respond back to him? Did you feel like I should, but I'm not, or was it more like you received it like, oh great, love that he sent that, and just didn't respond back and it was all good? Like what did you take?
Yeah, exactly what you just said. As far as, oh hey, like I'm thinking in my mind is like he just said, hey, have a good Friday. I don't know. I didn't know I needed to respond to him.
So you didn't feel bad at all by not responding. You were just cool with it.
Exactly. Because he was telling me to have a good Friday. So I didn't feel obligated to send a text message back, to him saying, hey, by the way, happy Friday as well.
Yeah.
And so I didn't feel obligated to say that. But I feel like for today's episode, in my mind here recently and correct me if I'm wrong, do you feel like I should have text message back on something like that?
To me, if someone texted me like that, I would text back, because to not text back, it would be mortifying to me. But that's exactly what we're talking about today.
Yep.
To me, what you're doing, someone texts you and says, great, have a great Friday. Where is the rule that you should text back?
Right.
So there's the issue for people, right? Like, what is the rules and laws of the communication? And so we'll probably get to that at the end, but if there's rules and laws, and if they're known what they are up front, then the anxiety, the fear or disappointment or whatever it is will completely go away. Because let's say we both agree, hey, if I send you a text on Fridays and I'm not looking for a response back, I just want you to know I have a great day. And you're like, right. Okay, cool. Or if I say, hey, P.S., if you send me a text and I don't respond, it's not because I'm not wanting to talk to you. It's that I'm dialed in over here. But just know I love you always, right? So that would just be an agreement. But then all the pressure would be off. But we don't have that conversation, right? And so where's the rule? And so there's really, why would it be wrong that or bad that you didn't respond back? It's a unspoken, it's not a real rule, but we're told that it should be.
Well, in full context, so I would have that conversation, and this is so that would happen. He would bring it up. Oh, my son never texts me back, joking, say that, and be like, Dad, let me share some context with you. He's like, you remember when you were in your mid-30s? He goes, yeah, I remember this is about 20, 30 years ago. I was like, yeah, what were you doing in that time? He's like, well, I was working a lot. I was like, okay, so what do you think I'm doing? I'm doing it. Well, he's like, I get it. He's like, I just want to let you know that I love you. I was like, well, that's it. Like, I didn't feel, if you want me to respond, I can. But, typically if it's something with safety, or what's the dialogue here? Like, like you said, what's the expectations?
Yeah.
What is the rules on responding? So now he knows. That's the beautiful thing about it. We've had this conversation. We've had this communication. He goes, oh, just because I send you something doesn't mean my son's going to respond, but if he needs something or has a question,
Yeah.
and then I'll make sure
Different
that
context.
I'm in that context.
Yeah.
But the flip side of that, Ewan, is here recently I had an individual so the flip side of this is I had an individual that was going to be joining the Level Up and Live community product. So I reached out, make sure he had all the information, the details, got all the questions and concerns answered, and no response on the text message. And he expressed interest before then that's something he would be interested in joining. Cool. Hey, here's a follow-up text. And I will follow up. So here's a follow-up text. Didn't hear. So I called, and then I called him the next morning. And in that morning, he kind of was surprised, like, oh, hey, I was like, hey man, it's John. You got a few minutes? He goes, yeah, I got a few minutes. He's like, whoa. No, I'm actually headed out right now. Can I text you back? Can I text you back? I was like, okay, no problem, man. Want to respect your time. Text me back. So that to me is a rule. When you tell somebody that you're going to do it and then don't do it, you're out of line with your integrity, because we are men of our word. So you say you're going to do something, do it. Now, I have an actionable strategy. Make sure you're midway through this episode, you stay through to the end, because a lot of times what we do, Ewan, and I know this from just with dealing with team members, spouses, people that don't have that skill set, call it what you want, to send that text message or let that person know because they don't want to hurt them or, whether they're overwhelmed. And we'll get in that here in a second because I want to pick your brain on that.
Yeah.
So there is a strategy behind that removes the emotions and the feelings that I use myself. But
that's the nugget everyone's going to want to have right there.
Key ingredient.
Write that one down.
So my question is to you, Ewan, like we talked about this behind the episode a couple of days ago. When that happens, because that happens all the time, it's not just with this individual, but that happens, whether it's an email or business deal or business opportunity. To me, that creates there's so much animosity, because if that individual reaches out to me in the future and, wants help with something or has a question for something, that's the first thing. Well, you ghosted me, so you've almost burnt that bridge when you ghost people. So I'm curious on why do you think that we do that, whether you're a business owner, sales professional, or just an individual leveling up? Why do you think that we do that to ourselves and to the other individual?
Because when you have a certain level of respect for someone, or you don't want to lose approval or friendship or bond, but by telling no to someone in our culture society, if we tell someone no, well, now there's a separation. We're not on the same page anymore. We're not as close as we thought, and so all these connotations go with telling someone no or rejecting them. It's awkward. Like, you don't want that awkward silence, and you don't want to be asked, well, why not? Right. So we avoid, right? What ends up happening, all that's going on in our heads in a split second. So we just avoid, put it off. We don't stare it down. We don't want to look. I'll just sweep that under the rug, which is the worst thing to do, right? Our minds is trying to protect ourselves by doing that, because it senses danger, and it's just, I'm going to put that away for now and go do something else. And we put it on hold, but it doesn't go away, right? It stacks up on top of each other. And we know we're going to have to face it at some point, which means it's going to be carried with us, right? It's like this baggage, this weight, right? And it impacts your identity. And so I think you've done that so many times, becomes habitual. Now your identity that's your go-to move. It worked the last time, right? I didn't have to say no and go through that awkward conversation. So I'll just sweep it under the rug for now. And I'll deal with it at some other point. But the impact is, now look how you now perceive that person. And that person probably knows as well, right? So again, it impacts their identity. So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. And it also depends on the time of day. Like, let's say even this is a real deal, decision fatigue. Let's say you've been making decisions all day long and you've been working hard or hustling and you've been head down in the zone. And then someone asks you something, a request. It's going to require more energy of you to accept. It might take brain power to process. Can I fit that thing in? Is it something I want to do? Can I afford it? And so it's like, I've got nothing left in the tank. I'm going to put that off. Same thing, same avoidant behavior. I'm going to put that off. I'll deal with it later. It's procrastination, right? And so it's all psychological. It's all about and none of it, here's the wild part, none of it's true. None of it's true. These are conversations we're having in our heads that are just generated from our past experiences. And none of it's real. You could just say, nope.
Yeah.
I'm good. Thank you.
Yeah.
But we don't, but we're going to get to that. We're going to get to how you could do that and feel okay. And there's a number of different techniques, and different things. I've got a couple myself that have really worked for me. And I can't wait to hear yours, because I want to add that to my deal. But yeah, I would say that's where a lot of that comes from. It's an avoidant behavior. That's why people do it. They're trying to protect themselves from animosity, aggression, disappointment, all those things. You never know which one, but it's something along those lines.
Yeah. And I don't like it for people, because like when I think of this individual and I think of other people in the past that have done this and ghosted, I think about my wife that was pretty much deeply hurt. And honestly, in 30 plus years, I've never heard of a scenario like this, man. And sometimes, here's full transparency. We are strong personalities. We own it. Like, that's just, we call ourselves the power couple. Like, sometimes, like, what you see is what you get. Like, we're raw and real. We wear it on our shoulders, and you either love us or you know, there might be the opposite effect of that. And he's laughing because he knows what I'm talking about. But I love it so much, because when you know who you are, you're authentic. You can do those things, and you can say no with authority, and just builds respect. And you've always said that. You're like, man, I respect somebody that can say no.
Yeah.
And so with this individual, she was so connected. Kendra was so connected with this individual, man. They had deep conversations, Ewan, like me and you have had, just heart to heart, just sharing their heart and soul. And for several years, and this individual was older than Kendra. So Kendra almost looked up to her like a mentor. They would talk to each other going to school in the mornings and in the afternoon times. And sometimes when, me and Kendra, we'd have there'd be an argument or something like that, she'd be able to reach out to him, because, it's always important to have that mentor. Well, when that comes down to it, and you have somebody close, it'd be like you ghosting me. When I'm going through something, I need to talk to my buddy Ewan, but then he ghosted me, right? There's going to be so much respect lost from that individual. Well, this individual had ended up ghosting Kendra, and Kendra's had reached out to her. They literally, Ewan, had phone calls set up every single day going into, it was like, when she told me, she disclosed all this to me and I had no clue. I was like, well, that sounds like mine and Ewan's relationship.
Yeah. Wow.
And she was telling me this, and she's like, yeah. And she's like, I'm really hurt. And I said, well, tell me more. Maybe she lost her phone or she got a different number. And she goes, no, I messaged her on Facebook and she saw it, and I've texted her, I've called her. And maybe I'll just give it a few days. She gave it a few days, and then days turned into weeks, and then weeks have turned into months. And she brought it up several times, and finally she just gave it to the Lord, right? She just prayed about it. She's like, hey, and she sent a message. She said, if I did something wrong, I'll own up to it. Just please let me know. Yeah. I cherish our friendship. I cherish our relationship, Ewan.
Yeah.
And this individual to this day, and this has probably been about 6 to 8 months, has not reached back out to her and let her know what had happened.
And Kendra doesn't have any idea.
Has no clue, man. And Kendra is the type of woman, like, we own up. Like, we typically, 99.9% of the time, we own up to our mistakes. Yeah. And that other 0.1%, it's because we're not aware, and maybe we did make a mistake that, and maybe that's that one instance where, like, Kendra didn't get the clue of this individual in this scenario. But man, I know she did everything in her power. But man, that just goes to show you, like, ghosting people. My point here is it hurts people.
Yeah.
Like that, like,
and that's on a deep level.
That's on a deep level. How, like, just tell me, we don't even have to be friends moving forward, but like, how can I improve moving forward?
Yeah.
And so I've got another story with me, man, we're running out of time, but I got another story for you as well. Yeah. That I was in the process of ghosting somebody, but I ended up doing something about it. I don't know if we have time to share that.
Dude, go for it, man. I think, why not? This is good stuff. It's important. People need to hear this. This is a huge, the more the merrier. Like, this is, people need to hear how other people handle it. Because currently they're in their own heads and it's all on their shoulders. So hearing this is good.
But I'm curious on your thoughts on, though, like, what, like, on a scenario like that engaging, like, what would drive somebody to, like, if me and you had a relationship and I ghosted you and you ghosted me, like, what would drive somebody to do that?
Yeah, you'll never know. She'll never know. And so when it gets to that point for me, you'd have to think. You'd have to just weigh it up. What has happened? Where am I currently at with that? I've tried everything. I don't know what I did. And so you'd have to acknowledge that I must have done something, right, to set that off.
Right. Exactly.
Maybe I did. Maybe I didn't. I'll choose that I did, and I don't know what it is. And she won't respond back. I can't control what she does. So I'm going to have to reconcile. and also acknowledge that this is really sad, like it's a hurtful thing, and go through that process of grieving, and come out the side of it, uh, not coming out jaded, right? Like, so you don't, well, I'm not going to get close to someone again because look what happened last time. No, you can't do that. You have to say, go through the whole process. And, for Kendra, if she can come out and still be vulnerable with people, and know that other relationships that won't happen with, and just think, okay, grieve the relationship as a loss, and then and move on, with time, and at some point maybe that they reach out and they can discuss that, but she can't control it, can't control that other person, and it's so sad. And yeah, just the impact of that ghosting on Kendra it's hurtful, very hurtful.
I would never do this, but for the listeners listening to this, I know they probably want to hear this. What if I ghosted you? What would you do?
Man, I would exactly what I just said right there. I would do the same. If you did, and I couldn't get a hold of you, and we couldn't connect, we weren't talking. I would have to be like, man, I don't know what I did. I probably, if that happened, I probably would know what I did, because I'd analyze it so hard. I'd be like, that's exactly what I did. I must have done something there.
Then what would you do?
I would definitely put a message out there of forgiveness, and ask for forgiveness. If it was something, I'd be like, I'm not sure what I did. I don't expect you to forgive me, but if you have it in your heart that you could, it would mean a lot to me. And if there's any chance for us being friends in the future, I'll work on it. Guaranteed. In fact, you'd help me out by letting me know what it was. I would deeply appreciate it, even if we're not friends anymore. And then after that, if you didn't respond back to that, there's nothing I could do. There's nothing more. Right. I couldn't pander after. If that doesn't do it, control. I'd have to accept, okay, that's over, and then grieve. Like, man, this is really hurtful, really, really difficult, and sad. How do I come out a better version of myself with this experience? Like, that's the only option you've got, to be honest. And that's what I would do. And I'd be, I'd probably be heightened awareness on whatever I thought it was going forward with other people, try and improve on that thing, so I don't get the same outcome, and
you know what I would do if the tables returned?
What's that?
You know what I'd do if the tables returned?
What would you do?
Like, if you ghosted me,
what would you do?
What do you think I would do?
Well,
and, for the listeners listening to this, if you've been following our journey and you know a little bit about like my personality, drop it in the comments on what you think I would do. If you're watching this live on my door,
I would also do that. Yes, I would. If it was, I would definitely come find you. Like, that scenario there.
Would you though? I don't know, bro. Well, I don't know
for sure. Any place I've ever left, like job wise, like it would be easy to just text someone like I'm out, or if it's not important, like I've always, it's an honor thing for me. I've got to see someone eye to eye. Like, if I can't see them eye to eye, I'm calling them on the phone. I'm going to have a hard conversation, even though it's going to be super awkward. For my own integrity, I've got to. So, I would want to see face to face.
Would you have done that? Because I mean, you're in your 40s, right? And that's obviously wisdom, and that's obviously why you're one of my closest friends in your inner circle, because that is you, and I respect that, right? So much about you. Maybe there's something I didn't like, you would bring it up in your own kind and loving way. But 10 years ago, somebody listening to this in their teens, 20s, 30s, they don't know how to handle it. Would you be able to, would you take that same process?
I've always had that hard conversation. I need to have it, our relationship, if we'd only known each other for a couple of years, and that happened, I don't know if we would have been deep enough to go there, or if we would even have the space capacity to do that at that time. But now we've known each other for 13, 14 years. Like, I would keep knocking on your door until you were my friend again,
Yeah. Well, and here's the beautiful thing about it. When you have a relationship like that, it's accountability. So in my transition into the accountability factor is like our lives would be able to talk through us, right? We'd pray about it. We'd talk through it.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, that's why I love Kendra so much, and we were able to talk through those things, and she was hurting. I was able to talk to her about it. It's like, just pray about it, and do only with what you can control. So I think for the listener listening to this is like, man, ghosting hurts. And so making sure, let's go into transitioning as we wrap things up, and I want to get your thoughts and some tips on to avoid ghosting and what people can do, one or two different things that they can do moving forward so they don't ghost people.
Yeah. For me, if someone's asked me to do something in the past, I would have been a yes, like, yeah, because I don't want them to not ask me again, or to not ask because I've told them no. Now I've very much found, like, do I really want to do it? And I analyze myself, yes or no. And if I don't, I will say, kindly no. And also a great way to do that is if you have a number of things planned already for yourself. It's kind of a non-negotiable, and you've already had them planned, and someone asks you to do something like, "Hey, I already have plans." So it's an easy no. And if it is something you want to do, then you can say yes to that. So that's kind of like almost having a canned response, so that kind of frees you up to be able to answer quickly. And because I think about the consequences of this is going to pull my piece if I don't answer as soon as I can. Right. Like it might be 3 hours or it might be next day because that's when I could. And so I don't feel bad about that. If it's when I could, if it's when I'm deliberately putting it off, like, well, and I just don't want to see it anymore. So that definitely helps. Like just being able to have a prepared response. That's helped me a ton. What would be one of yours?
So for me, like one of the things that I leverage on doing, because a lot of times, if somebody that is ghosting somebody, kind of like what we talked about early in the episode, it's because of they're overwhelmed or they have other things going on. But if you're that person that wants to be a human being of your word and you say you're going to do something, but you don't do it, right? It's pulling your piece from it. So or maybe it's because you don't know what to say or how to approach it, or the fear of like saying no to this other person, or maybe you're a people pleaser. There's all these different scenarios, right? And so to really remove that, if you're not working on that skill set, because it is a skill set, if you just can't come out and say no and communicate that with that person. So one of the things that I've learned and have just been practicing for myself is I'm surprised you don't know the answer to this, Ewan.
Well, I might, but I want to hear from you.
Should we do another episode? Should we go ahead and let the listeners know like what the actual strategy is?
I think hit them, dude. I want to know how you construct it in your mind, because I think it's valuable.
So whether it's an email or whether it's a text message or even maybe it's a phone call. So if I say I'm going to do something, so in this scenario, if the tables were turned and somebody called me and I picked up the phone and I said, I'll text you back this afternoon, right? Well, I know that I need to be a man of my word and text this person back this afternoon. All it is, we both know it's prolonging because they don't, they may have something going on, but maybe they're overwhelmed or maybe they don't know what to say. So they just push it off. Hey, I'll text you, but they don't end up texting you. Yeah. So if that's the case, or, some of the other scenarios that we've shared with the ghosting, simply go to, here it is, Ewan, drum roll. You ready for this?
Yeah.
I don't know what to say. You simply go to your app, type in ChatGPT, say, hey, I don't know how to respond kindly, lovingly to Sean about this, and this. Please give me a short and sweet text message to send on saying no. Boom. It's going to filter it. You copy, you paste, you send a text message. Move on with your day. Hey, man, I love it. Thank you so much for letting me know. Boom. Relationship restored.
Yeah, dude, I love
Simple
that.
Simple is that. So how do you feel about that?
I love it. I mean, it takes all the thinking out of it. For people to do that over and over again, I think if someone who is having trouble responding back to people currently, if they did that 2, 3, 4 times, the fear will just go away. They'll realize, it's not that big a deal. It actually feels good to say no. It feels good to respond back right away. And so that's a great. Take the thought process out again, because what's the cost if you don't do what you just said, right? It's going to pull your piece, anxiety, whatnot, right? So which one do you want? You're going to respond anyway. Yeah. So that's a beautiful way to do it, dude. Yeah. ChatGPT.
It's an alternative, right? It's better than the alternative of not communicating and not responding. I don't care if this is an email, somebody you're like, I don't want to respond to this person on email, or maybe it's I don't know. Maybe it's a bill collector. Maybe it's an opportunity. I think about the story that Dan Martell has shared on his podcast. He talks about this all the time. I think about business opportunities. So he sent out a message to this individual by email and said, hey, are you interested in being I think it was an investor or a partner in this product? Let me know. You're my first guy that I'm reaching out to. I'm reaching out to nobody else out there. This guy ghosted Dan for 2 weeks. 2 weeks, no email. Well, of course, that's 14 days. I'm moving on, right? Dan said the guy followed up with him after 2 weeks and said, I'm interested. Tell me more. Dan sent an email back and said, hey, I've already moved on, brother. Right? And so he talks about that over and over. Don't ghost people, man. Yeah. If now's, and he talks about like we talked about, it's because the person's overwhelmed, or it's the fear of because you have so much respect for that person. You're like, oh man, partnering with, Ewan, Sean, Level Up and Live. Like, oh man, I don't know. Joining their mastermind group, the Level Up and Live community. I don't know. Like, I'm going to ghost them, right? Because I don't know what to say. Well, it's like we're talking about with these actionable strategies. Hey, great, thanks for keeping me involved. But let me think on this. Can you give me 48 hours?
That's
Something. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's a key one. Is setting a time frame. That's one of mine as well. Like, hey, I'll have an answer to you by X time. Because now you're in complete integrity and you need time to think about, because it might be something serious or you have to coordinate a number of things. But by communicating the time frame, here, give me 48 hours. Now you've got that time and the deadline to follow through on. If there's no deadline, that's why a lot of time just keeps bleeding on. You're like, well, I hadn't told them I was going to respond back at this time, and so you just keep putting it off. So I think that would be another valuable tip.
Awesome, man. Well, any final thoughts, brother, as we wrap up the episode?
Man, I hope people got some confidence. That's one of those things. Again, like if you're doing that, putting things off, experiment with it too. See how good it feels to respond back right away, and embrace that and get good at it. It's a skill. Everything's a skill gap, and it's one of those things you can learn. Well,
guys, if you've enjoyed the episode today, make sure to leave us a review. This is how we spread the word, make a bigger splash, a bigger impact. Please let us know what you liked about the show. Positive feedback, negative feedback. We'd greatly appreciate it. So share this with somebody that's maybe ghosting you because they need to hear this episode. And they can hear it from our voice, the Ewan and Sean at Level Up and Live. And outside of that, let us know on a DM in the comments what you would like to see in future episodes. We're always open to what you're facing as far as challenges, adversity, and new topics here at Level Up and Live. We're going on 150 episodes, so we need to hear from our listeners and audience and what you guys want to hear and see. So outside of that, Level Up and Live.
Level Up and Live.